So I know I'm a little behind the times here with the news that Bernard Hill has made some comments about the Rings of Power, but what I find very interesting is that we have all the media outlets claiming that he hates the show, right? I've seen so many YouTube videos claiming that Theoden hates Rings of Power. Like literally that's the headline I see on almost every YouTube video is Theoden hates Rings of Power. And yet, when I went and read the actual press release, and you can find variations of it throughout all the different news outlets, you will find that that's not actually what he said. He didn't actually say he hates the show, uh, nor did he slam Rings of Power. He did make a critique, and the media's outlets have chosen to run with that as though it's him condemning the show. But really, what he said was that he has no interest in watching it because, in his mind, it's a money making venture, and I'm not interested in watching that or being in it. Good luck to them and all that stuff, but it's not like the real thing. That's not the same thing as hating something. That's a very big difference. He's telling the media, best of luck to them, but you know what? I think it's a money making thing. For me, they're exploiting the intellectual property, which is absolutely what we're doing. That's a truthful observation, but it is not slamming the show or hating on it. He then goes on to make further commentary and said, should the Lord of the Rings franchise have ended after Peter Jackson wrapped the original trilogy, which he was a part of as King Theoden, and he said completely yes. He says, I think they were pushing it when they made The Hobbit, because The Hobbit's a tiny book. They did it well. They did it really, really well. They expanded it, but I think you can only stretch a piece of elastic so far. I think they managed it in The Hobbit because there were some really good things in the book, without a doubt. Um, so he's not going to watch the Rings of Power, which is fine because not everyone has to watch it. Not everyone has to like it. Conversely, the people who do watch it and the people who do like it have the right to do so without being accused of being stupid or all these other things. I've seen some really bad sides of fandom come out around Rings of Power, more so even than um, Star Wars and Star Trek to some degree, and it's mostly related to things like this, where we have a running commentary that's not truthful to what was actually in the news. The news just said he didn't want to watch the show because he felt like they were exploiting it for money. That's truthful. But he also said, best of luck to them in all that they're doing. That is not the same thing as hating the show or slamming the show. If he was slamming the show, he would have made 100% negative comments instead of saying, best of luck to them. They're free to do what they want. But for me, it ended at the end of the film franchise that I was a part of. I even think they pushed it too far with The Hobbit, but The Hobbit did have some good things in it, and they did pull it off, even though I think they stretched it a bit thin. But that was as far as I think they can stretch it. So I don't know. I feel like we're getting to the point. If you've noticed that I have started to cover Rings of Power less and less since it went off the air. The month of October, I still was covering it pretty frequently because there was a lot of stuff that we were doing post show in terms of analyzing the various characters and everything else. But here we are, in December, and I've been maybe producing one, possibly two times a week, things related to Rings of Power. Because there's just not a lot to talk about anymore because they're in the middle of production for season two. I think the most recent thing I covered was the recasting of Adar, and then of course this, which I'm actually about a week behind on. I think this came out. When was this published? November 30th. So yeah, I'm a week behind the times, almost on talking about this one. But I think at this point people are really reaching. You could include me in that when I talk about things like this that are a week old. But I didn't really want to talk about the Rings of Power so much as I just wanted to talk about, when we've got people who are reaching so far to try to find something to rant about, that they will invent something like Bernard Hill hating Rings of Power, and that's clearly not what he said, and that's not what's going on here. He was just making an observation that it's being exploited for cash, which we've all been talking about for the last couple of years in regards to anytime you look at the exploitation of an intellectual property, That's exactly what's going on. It's being milked for cash. That's not necessarily a bad thing. If you've watched, I did a previous episode, I think, on the Tolkien estate when we were talking about Simon Tolkien and saying, we may not like the way he's doing things, and it may seem fairly scummy, but at the end of the day, it's his right and it's his family's right to exploit that intellectual property in any way they see fit. And if I was in charge of it, you can bet your ass I would be exploiting that intellectual property to every single possible degree to make as much money as possible because that's what they're there for. Like, these are public works that were not public works in the sense that anyone has access to them, but they were works that were published to be put out there in the public eye to make money off of. If it wasn't going to be a work that was there for profit, it would have been published in a journal, set aside on the shelf, and only read by family members. But the reality is that Tolkien was making a living off of that and wanted to expand that and give a life to his kids, and his kids wanted to give a life to their kids, and now those kids are wanting to give a life to their kids, so the cycle goes on. Um, Nothing wrong with that. It's just people like Bernard Hill and myself and others have recognized that. And some people like to call it evil. They're like, it should, no one should be exploiting Tolkien. It should never have gone beyond the books. The books are the only version. No one should ever do anything beyond the books. I don't think that's true at all, but I do think Bernard Hill's commentary is very, very um, noteworthy, especially when he talks about you can only stretch a piece of elastic so far because eventually it's just going to snap and break. And that's kind of what we've got with Rings of Power in the sense that they've stretched it all they can. I haven't seen anybody else talk about the show other than the four hobbits, Elijah Wood, Billy Boyd, Sean Astin, and Dominic Monaghan, when they came out in support of the cast and coming out against the racist trolls online. They wore the shirts that featured the ears of Middle Earth creatures in various skin tones, and Elijah Wood wrote, "You are all welcome here." Kudos to them for doing so. But I haven't seen any of the other cast members making commentary beyond Bernard Hill. I would imagine they probably all have unique perspectives on things, given that they were part of something that was kind of a genre-defining franchise over the years. I mean, people who are in, the actors who were in Star Wars have a unique experience. Actors who were in the Lord of the Rings films by Peter Jackson have a unique experience that is a lot different than what a lot of working actors will experience on a film because they were participating in these groundbreaking franchises that have gone on to create generations of fans as opposed to a limited window run in the theater. So it's great hearing from guys like this, but you also have to remember that Bernard Hill is part of the old guard. I believe this article even states it. I believe he's 77 or 78 years old. So he's an older gentleman. He's been around the block. He has been an actor for a very long time, and he has seen these things come and go in the past. So I like to hear from guys like him who talk about the reality of film. I've loved some of the stuff he's done over the years. He was in obviously Titanic is one of his roles, but I really loved him in I think it was The Scorpion King because he plays like the crazy old alchemist who helps. Is it The Scorpion King? Hold on. Bernard Hill Scorpion. Is it the Scorpion King? Yeah, Philos. He totally did that role in The Scorpion King. And that was one of those fun roles that I loved because it was comedic and it was quirky and he had a lot of fun with it. But he's been around for a long time. It's kind of like Anthony Hopkins. These guys do a lot of different things and they have a lot of things to say about different topics and it's fun to listen to them comment. Anyway, that's my food for the thought today. This is less about Rings of Power and just more like, hey guys, he hasn't actually said anywhere that he hated the show. He's just commenting on it. Anyway, stay tuned. I am getting ready to do my first ever scripted Lord of the Rings piece of content ever. These are always off the cuff videos. I've never scripted anything on my channel. I always just ramble, which some people complain about because I don't do any video editing. But I am putting together a origin of the Dwarves of Middle Earth video, and then following that is going to be the history of the Dwarves of Middle Earth. Those two will be coming out in the month of December, and I'm about probably halfway through the production of um, the history or the origins. Excuse me, history comes next. I'm about halfway through the origins of the dwarves. um, so stay tuned for that. Hopefully that'll be coming next week at some point. But in the meantime, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, support with a super chat or sticker during these premieres. You can also do a super thanks after the fact Don't forget, join as a member down below. 3 different tiers, Patreon page. See you next time. Peace.